In the 1940s, industrialist Ted Koopman assembled a four-car team of midgets, most powered by Offenhauser four-cylinder engines like this one, and others powered by the less expensive V8 60-horsepower Ford engine. Built in 1939 by Joe Subject in Milwaukee, this car was first driven by Emil Andres, Bob Mill, and Don Brennan before it was sold to Koopman. Driver Joe Sestilio was handed money to go to Milwaukee, buy the car, and bring it home. Joe returned to drive it locally as number 17. He drove it from 1945 to mid-season 1947. Later, with the brilliant Buster Work as his mechanic, Sestilio took it to Los Angeles, racing it at tracks along the way before arriving at the LA Coliseum to race. The car was enormously successful, running at Milwaukee, Langhorne, and in the Northeast. When he returned from California, Sestilio had so much cash from races he'd won that he stuffed it under the rear seat of the tow car, a new 1946 Plymouth. Along the way, he was stopped for speeding, and one of the crew reached under the seat, pulled out cash to bribe the cop, and the team was quickly back underway. The engine was built and maintained by Buster Work, nationally known race driver and Offenhauser engine builder, who was so exacting in his work that he often changed camshafts to fit the track where the car would race next. The engine is a 105 CID, had two Riley carburetors before Hilborn injection was installed. Running on methanol, it produced 175 to 180 horsepower. The car was direct drive, weighed 825 pounds, and was garaged in Allston, Mass. Each of Koopman's drivers prepared the cars they drove. When Ed Casterline was killed at Seekonk in 1947 in his Koopman car, Ted Koopman was distraught and soon began selling everything he had assembled. The car went from Koopman to Ed Stone, the founder of New England Speed Equipment. Stone changed it to number 3 and put Johnny Black and Stan Woods in it for 1948 and the 1949 season. It was then sold to Long Island's Red Richter, who was the last to run it competitively sometime after 1951. Much later, Butch Walsh found the car in pieces and bought it. He never drove the car, instead trading it for a sprint car. Bruce Craig wound up with it before selling the car to vintage collector Mel Clark, who had it restored. New England's Sammy Packard accomplished the restoration, bringing it to the condition you see here. It was raced pretty much as you see it, including the chrome frame, and it runs. The car went from Mel Clark to Harvard Medical School doctor Bennett, who purchased much of Clark's collection when Mel sold everything he had before dying of cancer. Evan DeMoulis of the Market Basket grocery chain family bought the car in Bennett's auction. In 1993, Evan was killed in a tragic highway accident. The DeMoulis family knew Tommy Caruso had a soft spot in his heart for this car and was a good friend of Evan's, so they gave it to him. Tommy drove it in vintage races before selling it to Joe Freeman, who is the current owner and a member of the New England Racing Museum's Board of Directors. Before arriving at the New England Racing Museum, the car was on display for several years at Owl's Head Transportation Museum in the Faster the Quest for Speed exhibit. Special thanks to Tommy Caruso, who is a preservationist who has saved an enormous amount of New England auto racing artifacts, including cars, books, trophies, helmets, engines, signs, and uniforms. His grounds and shop in Tingsboro, Mass. Are a marvelous piece of historic preservation in their own right and include a vintage gas station. He provided the background information for the Koopman car